And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what? China. All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Exactly. Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit, like God's property is hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target, 'cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight, 'cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the
Most Egyptologists and anthropologists, archaeologists of the Eurocentric persuasion will say that Egypt is in Africa. They had to concede that, but then they still draw the line by saying that they weren't Africans like that. In other words, they weren't dark-skinned people. And of course, this is all part of the Great Deception. And the reality is that if they give up Egypt, ancient Kemet, if they give that up and say that that was a part of black Africa, then they will also have to give up Israel. And that's why they draw the line at Egypt, because if they give up Egypt, they've got to give up Israel.
Now, we're going to go over here, and I'm going to show you where Israel sits on the African tectonic plate, which means that Israel is northeast Africa. Now, when we look at this map, this is the Sinai, okay? This is the Red Sea. This is Egypt. This is the Sinai. This is Israel. All right, this is Saudi Arabia over here. Now, if you see this in Hebrew, it says Haluach Afrikani, the African plate. Here it is right here. Israel is sitting right here. Israel is sitting on the Haluach Afrikani, which means that Israel is northeast Africa.
Without question, we are in Northeast Africa. We are landlocked to Egypt, with the exception of the Suez Canal, which was a man-made ditch, a boundary now between, in fact, it's not even really a boundary anymore since Egypt has reclaimed the Sinai Peninsula. But nevertheless, even those of us who are Pan-Africanists in our thinking and Afrocentric, we forget and we leave off that portion of Northeast Africa and don't want to claim anything beyond that.
Europeans classified this area as a Middle East. You know, and then since this the Middle East, the other question, where the Middle West? Where the Middle North and where the Middle South? They don't have no geographical terms like that.
But the CT scan has one more surprise for Alejandro. Shammai's ethnicity.
Well, they have just told me that Shammai had a Nubian feature, which means that their ruling family was probably Nubian, and that was unexpected.
Examining Shammai's anatomy closely, the thickness of his bones and the shape of his nasal cavity, the anthropologists think he was a black African, likely from neighboring Nubia. a huge revelation that challenges the prevailing image of the Egyptian ruling class.
We always thought the ancient Egyptian elites were Mediterranean type. And in this sense, Shammai is representing the society of the frontier in which different ethnic groups were mixed. At the end, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. Shammai was Egyptian.
Where am I actually from? I mean, I know I'm American, but where my DNA is from? And so I said, well, let me take my DNA test. It was a 23andMe DNA test, and I took the test, and I was shocked when I saw the results. It came back, and it showed that I was actually a direct descendant of the Pharaoh Ramses III, and I knew nothing of the pharaohs. Didn't know much about Egypt, but everything you hear about, Bible stories and things like that. So for me, it was a huge shock, and that's how I found out about it.
Wow. So obviously you took it deeper and deeper. You saw all of these synchronicities in looking at images of the pharaoh, how much you and even your brother look like them, and your own company has like an eye logo that looks like the eye of Horus, unconnected to any of this. So what did this open up for you in terms of your own knowledge and learning about this?
I remember I was actually laying in my bed on Christmas Day, 2021, and I was going through my 23andMe DNA test, and that's when I saw that I was connected to the Pharaoh Ramses III, and again, I knew nothing of this situation. And so I looked up a sculpture of the Pharaoh Ramses III, and when I saw the sculpture, I literally screamed, and my wife said, "Dexter, what's wrong?" I said, this guy from 4,000 years ago, we look just alike.
Wells comes face to face with the man he's been searching for. A new portrait of the common ancestor of every man today. Adam. Without the skull, we can't know for sure what Adam looked like. But a combination of genetic evidence, Bender's forensic skills, and cutting-edge computer software suggest he looks something like this. Thousands of years after the Bible, and hundreds of years after Michelangelo, we have a whole new face for Adam.
I like the expression. He's got a very forceful look.
He's intent on something, maybe taking over the world. You begin to get perhaps an insight into why these guys won out and why this guy's our ancestor.
Their bones were discovered in Kafse Caves near Nazareth in Galilee in 1933. 13 fragile skeletons, one a woman, a tiny baby at her feet. When these bones were first uncovered, they were the oldest complete modern human skeletons ever found.
The numerous skeletons that have been found in caves in Israel at the sites of Kafse and Shkul show us that there were modern humans outside of Africa over 100,000 years ago. Those modern humans may well have gone up the Nile corridor through Sinai.
The entire Bible is about black people. Not only was Jesus black, but every character in the Bible seems to be black too. Yeah, Zephaniah and Jeremiah and Jebediah, those all aren't white people names, okay? And Jesus wasn't some tan, partially melanated Middle Eastern person either. I'm talking straight up black dude, okay? Even in the book of Revelation, when you get the vision of Daniel, he's describing someone with feet like burnt brass and white woolly hair, and we've got the deep running water voice with the red eyes, and you guys, he's black. The Jewish people are black people, like Kanye was right.
They don't pay rent. The city doesn't have money. It's a chain of events. It's so bad. One rough hour, and I mean real rough, the word will get out and it will end immediately. End immediately. It'll end immediately. We are the party of common sense. I knew that once they had open borders, all of the countries, I didn't think about all over the world. I thought in South America, it's all over the world. Last week, a lot of people came in from the Congo, a big prison in the Congo in Africa. Welcome to the United States. They came in from the Congo. They came in from the Congo. They came in from the Congo.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can
And then
take
when
land.
they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is quite
nothing happens.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people.
We had people waiting on airplanes. We had people who have helped our country, that have been translators for our military, that have been patriots for this country, that are waiting in camps while white Afrikaners are being let in on a fast track. We feel like that as a moral matter, we can't participate in.
This world and the next world are asymmetrical. The next world is where the majority of a person's actions, which determine his identity, are compensated. For the righteous, they exist in the world to come and they're rewarded. And for those whose major complexion is black, are excluded from the world to come.
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them. With the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah, with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
Want to say peace and blessings to everyone. Hope and pray all is well with you guys. Want to say again, hope you had a great Shabbat. Let me go ahead and unlock my camera here. Hope and pray you guys had a great Shabbat. We had a great Shabbat here. And I know that this live is a little late, but I wanted to give enough time for Benaya, my cousin Benaya. He did a great live covering and exposing what's going on, the threats against Nigeria. We covered that earlier this past week, but it was a great video that he had done, and so it triggered me because I was going to do a live tonight, but I was trying to debate on what I was going to teach on. But with everything going on in Africa, it not just with Africa, what's happening in this country under threat around the world against our people. The war that is declared, right in our face. So I thought about it. It's like, okay, what am I going to talk about tonight? And I remember doing this lesson here, The Battle for Africa. I did this lesson almost 3 years ago, The Battle for Africa, and really dealing with the intricacies when it comes to this pull for that continent, the resources, the people, just so much to unpack with that. And it even made me think about, too, it was a movie, I think it was called 2012. It was like an apocalyptic type movie, the end of the world type thing. And I'm not sure if you guys remember that movie. And how the whole entire globe reset. It was earthquakes, you name it, tsunamis. Pretty much in the movie, they had when I say they, the countries had an exit strategy, so to speak. And the strategy was creating these 3 huge arcs, right? But what really stood out to me was the end of the movie. Do you guys remember the end of the movie? Have you guys seen the movie 2012? Do you guys remember the end of the movie? You know, in the end of the movie, if you remember, they were having a discussion. You know, once the arcs settled, they said that the Earth reset itself. Do you guys remember what continent was at the top of the entire globe, and it enlarged itself, so to speak? Do you guys remember that? It was Africa. You know, and even though according to the movie, everything reset itself in the they said the continent of Africa increased its size. But family, we already know that the continent, and you know, contrary to what we've been taught on these maps, is larger than any of the continents in the world. And in fact, if you look it up, I know I was reading this a little while back. It says that Africa is birthing another continent, right? That's a whole nother discussion. So the battle for Africa, and I'm going to drop this this link inside the comment section. If Benaiah, I know he just did a live. If you want to jump on, feel free to do so. Berean Scholar, if you're in the building, or Sister Carol, if you guys are in the building, you want to jump on, feel free to do so. I'm going to drop the link here. Let me pull it out here. All right. So the battle for Africa, and we're just going to, you know, deal with some end time prophecy, so to speak. Some of the, you know, the conventional approach, but really going to take it beyond the conventional approach, dealing with eschatology. All right. So let's go ahead and stretch this out. Don't want to hold you guys up too long. And you could go and look inside the playlist. I believe it is inside the playlist, the series that I did titled "The Battle for Africa." I mean, so much I did with this series, right? And what I wanted to do, the whole goal of this series was to show the deception on all fronts. You know, one thing with our people, we've been conditioned to think that when it comes to salvation, when it comes to dealing with these other nations, that we can trust them. You know, we cannot trust them, family. And I'm going to prove it, you know, because I know within this awakening, not just this awakening, but those that are teaching end time prophecy, they teach that the United States is Babylon. And I'm here to tell you, Babylon is far greater than the United States. It's a spiritual Babylon that we're dealing with, and it's a global Babylon that pretty much every nation is connected to. Wherever our people are scattered, that's connected to Babylon. But before I get started, let me bring my brother here. I see him in the back here. Let me bring him out. Let me bring him out here so he can give his thoughts.
Shalom, brother. Shalom.
I want to say shalom to you, my brother. Hope and pray you had a great Shabbat.
We had a great Shabbat.
Hallelujah.
Had a good chance to fellowship and spend time with y'all's people.
Hallelujah. Always a good thing. Always a good thing. And so I know we had this conversation dealing with the Nigerian, the threat on Nigeria. We went over some historical things and families. Some of what we dealt with is inside this presentation, literally. This is when I pulled out the map, it's based off of this presentation. I took some of that out of here to put it into that presentation when I dealt with the names of the area of Sudan. All right. So any thoughts before we get started, Berean Scholar?
Yeah, you were right. Brother Benaiah did a great live on all the details that happened that drew people into Nigeria. Like he said, that ring the dinner bell because they knew it was something to go get.
Exactly. And, and the thing about it, that oil, we all knew it was oil.
Yeah.
We kind of, what he touched on was pretty much in sync with what we touched on initially, dealing with the oil. Of course, we didn't go into the details of the moving parts like he did. He did a great job with that. But we did highlight how Nigeria's rankings among other nations, and the point that he brought out is how that's going to increase. They
Yes.
did a great job with that. And then the other thing we pointed out, and he pointed out as well, is Nigeria calling out the 1948ers.
Yeah.
And so it was a great presentation. And so we want to just kind of build on that discussion, but take it from a different angle to show that all of them, for over and over again, they've always had that dinner bell ring for the continent of Africa. Didn't start with the time we live in right now, but I'm going to show you that even the scriptures prophesy about the battle for Akibulan, different names that Africa goes up under. And ultimately, it's to come after our people.
Right.
Right. And so that's the one thing I want to make sure we understand. And that's how you can really tell and kind of like, I would say, use discernment when you're dealing with people that are dealing with end time prophecy, is how do they identify the Israelites? And that can give you an idea of exactly where they are with their understanding of history, truly knowing who the people are, and really understanding the prophecies. So with that being said, as you can see here, family, the battle for Africa, you see the 4 horses in the back. Of course, you see Putin, you see Donald Trump, you see Netanyahu. It's a number of others I could put up here. I just didn't have time to do that because, again, when I updated, I tried to do a quick update of the presentation by putting some formats of where we are today. But I was like, I just don't have time for it. But anyway, so let's get started here, family. I mean, the prophecies, and that's the key that, I want to make sure we all understand. The prophecies are fulfilling itself in our eyes, before our eyes right now. No matter how bad you see things, guess what? It's all been prophesied. Everything that you see is in the scriptures. And I'm going to show you a piece of scripture that many of you guys probably, being in the church, viewed some of the prophecies through a certain lens. But when you see it now, it's like, wow. When you read it now, it's like, wow, removing the oppressors out of the picture and focusing on us, the true Israelites, and all what we've been through, then you'll see how everything synchronizes in terms of the prophecies, in terms of history. All right. The battle for Africa. So is there a current battle for Africa? And that question mark is over to the right. So that tells you that I got to still clean up my slide. So forgive me, family, but blame Berean Scholar for my slides being off. I tried to update it, but didn't do I did a somewhat okay job. I just didn't have time to really put it in the format that I like it to be now. All right. So you get to blame Berean Scholar tonight.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
So is there a current battle for Africa? Are there any prophecies that predicts the ongoing battles for Africa? And I want to make this clear, family. I know inside this awakening, and this is where we have to be careful, we can start taking on the hatred of the name stealers, of the people that have exploited the entire continent. I know that when you use the word Africa, for some reason in this awakening, when you use the word Africa, say Israel is in Africa, it's almost like a curse word to some. They think that it's the worst of the worst, or if you even mention Africa, or whatever the case may be, some of the tribes, they will they'll use the term Hamitic, Ham, with the same under the same spirit of the oppressors. And we can't do that, family. That is perpetuating the hatred, the divisiveness that all these nations have done towards us, and really made it so that way we are divided, even with Nigeria itself, right? Nigeria was multiple nations, believe it or not. It wasn't just this whole landmass of one lump of, one people. No, it's multiple nations. And Nigeria was created by the Europeans. That's just a fact in terms of the way that they sliced and diced it. All right. So I want to say here, even the scriptures tells us not to abhor or hate the Egyptians. You know what I mean? Because we were in their country, so to speak. Of course, we went into transition into captivity. But the point that I'm making is, family, let's make sure that we do things in decency and order. We're supposed to be the light. We're supposed to be the reflection of the Most High, not the reflection of our oppressors, not the reflection of their divisiveness, their agenda to hinder what we're doing. Any comments, Berean Scholar, before we continue? Your mic is muted.
There you go. I can't blame it on anybody else, can I?
Exactly.
In Zephaniah, the Most High said He's going to purify our language, but He also need to, there's a place where you got to purify our blood, and also our minds, because we have been conditioned with the mindset of the oppressor that we go against ourselves more than they go against us. And the Stockholm syndrome is deep and that's a stronghold in our mental state that we have to acknowledge and get rid of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And family, we got the special guest in the building, the man of the hour, going Sugar Hill Gang, the man of the hour, too sweet to be sour. We got Benaiah Israel in the building.
Too sweet to be sour.
Right.
I love that.
You went back on that one, cuz.
You dug in the crates on that one.
Right. Got young folks saying, what is he talking about? Hey, peace and blessings, my brother. Peace and blessings, family. How y'all doing?
Doing good, man. And just was commenting on the great job that you did in laying out the presentation earlier, and things that the people really need to understand in terms of the prophecies. You know what I mean? Many, because of how we've been conditioned, to view the scriptures a certain way, and also view ourselves in a certain lens that the oppressors want us to view ourselves in, further pushing their agenda along. Great job, man. Anything you want to share, cuz, before we get started?
Hey, I'll praise to the Most High, man. Just thanks for the invite. Just always great to hang out with family. And you hit the nail right on the head with that. I mean, people have to remember that, it was the Europeans that gave Nigeria that name. It's not like they chose it themselves.
Yeah.
So they chopped it up.
Yeah. And so what we're going to do is we're going to touch on some of that history, family. And this is my belief, for many of the countries that's in Africa, where our people, not just where our people dwell, but also the Hamitic people and other, they have to, free themselves of the Europeans, because many of the names that you see comes from the Europeans. Of these African countries comes from the Europeans. And as long as we hold on to those labels, those names, it's going to continue to keep them, so to speak, attached to us. Any thoughts, Benaiah and Berean Scholar, before we could move on?
I really love the way when you pointed out that the oil resources was the dinner bell. But if you look at what the lesson you did before, Pastor, Africa has been the center of the dinner bell. The gold, the minerals, and us, we were an important commodity. So those are the things that's been in that land.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, right on point, my brother. Because I remember when I was doing the research for Hidden Hebrews, and I was trying to do the research for I was trying to get access to the archives in Lisbon, and of course I'm all the way here in the States, and so I don't, I have a geography problem. But I was able to work with this sister that she was based out of Spain, and so she was able to go over there and and get access to it. And as she was kind of working with me to get those resources, one of the things she told me, just like a side chat, she was like, you know what, Benaiah, she's like, I want to apologize to you and your people. I was like, well, why? She was like, because she said, my family is part of the family that owned your people in Africa. She said that my people, even to this day, we make money. The way that we got our riches is that we have gold mines in Africa. I forgot which country. But basically, she said that, and of course, if you look at the history of how we treated your people, she said my forefathers treated your people very bad. She said, I just can't. And that's why she felt moved to help, do the research and spread the word of who we are. But just to kind of land back on what my brother Berean Scholar was saying, they were part of it. They know what they did, and it's deep.
Absolutely, absolutely. And family, it's so many layers to this. So many layers to this, and that's why I wanted to do this live, titled "The Battle for Africa." Kind of revisit this old lesson here, and Benaiah, you know how we do. Berean Scholar, you know how we do. Anytime you guys want to comment, feel free to comment. Feel free to jump off the top rope. All right, and land back. Right, not piggyback, right, Benaiah?
Lamb back, I like that.
Right, lamb back.
all right. So again, are there any prophecies that predict the ongoing battles for Africa? Right, the name Jews, right? The name the Jews really wanted for, right? And actually the area that the Jews really wanted for Israel. Yeah, that's correct. I worded it. I'm having a brain freeze here. The name the Jews that we know today, the name that they really wanted for Israel. You guys already know this, but I like to bring this out from time to time because, even though this may be old to us, but there's always information that's new to people that are coming into this awakening. So that's why I like to just refresh in certain information, just so that way we all could be on the same page here. But the name the so-called Jews, the 1948ers, really wanted for Israel, the name of the area that you see there that they're occupying right now. This is coming from the archives.gov. This is just a screenshot. Excuse me here. Let me fix this here. This is just a screenshot of the letter. And I mean, literally, I'll drop the link here and you could go here and you could verify this. This is the letter that Harry Truman signed. And it says here, this government has been informed that a Jewish state has been proclaimed in Palestine, and the recognition has been requested by the provisional government thereof. The United States recognizes the provisional government as a de facto authority of and look at what you see here. You see Jewish crossed off, Jewish state crossed off. And Harry Truman literally wrote State of Israel over it. And Benaiah, do you want to touch on just the significance of that, just so that way people can really understand what's happening here? because some may not see the significance of him crossing out Jewish state and writing Israel, state of Israel, on this official letter that recognizes that area as being a nation.
No, well, I'm amazed at that letter, man. That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, because if you just think about what would have happened if you would have left it as is, man. But no, I didn't have a whole lot to add to that one, Pastor Kelly. It's just that, it just goes to show that I don't know. Did Harry Truman know something that the Jewish guys didn't? I don't know. Berean Scholar, you had anything on that one?
I think you're hitting it right there, because I think he knew the purposes of that land state, that being a state. He knew what they was up to, and some of the things we're just now waking up to. He saw what's going on with the former presidents, how when they went against him, what happened.
Absolutely, and you guys hit it on the nail. And the key, like what you guys laid out, is as far as the significance of this is, number one of the things that many people may not understand, may know, and Benaiah, you and I did a tag team on this on one of the videos I did a while back, that how Israel already had a Jewish state.
Exactly.
And the Jewish state was in Russia. I think it was called Birkenau, right? And that Jewish state was created, like, if I remember correctly, like in the 30s, before the 1948ers made their way over to where they are right now. And so they purposely wanted to rename that whole area to this Jewish state, the new Jewish state. So that would have completely given them even more of a I would say, the okay of just erasing history, which they're doing right now with the bombing and purposely, bombing. I mean, they just completely leveled Gaza. But then we see, as you touched on, some about Iran, Iraq, some of the historical artifacts that that got destroyed. So, this is really significant, because when you do the research and study on Harry Truman, he was a full supporter of the 1948ers. But it's like, what made him shift? What made him shift? What made him say, shortly after they became a state, that he compared these guys to Hitler? He said that they are worse than Stalin or whatever, Stalin, how you pronounce his name. Said that they're worse than him. And the question is, what made him even do that? You know what I mean? That's something to think about. For someone to be pro-Israel, so to speak, and then he say, you know what, these guys are worse than the worst. I mean, worse than the worst. Any thoughts, guys?
Yeah, you can see that. Oh, go ahead.
No, that was right. He saw what they did.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, I'm gonna copy this over. Go ahead, Berean. I mean, not Berean, but Benaiah. Any other comments you have? Or you good?
Well, I was just going to point out on the screen that you have there. Notice that they have state. They don't have nation of Israel. They have the state of Israel. It's like they could only go so far with that lie, as far as them trying to pretend to be the people of the book. Because as far as, I mean, you guys are more versed in the scriptures than I am. So I don't think that there's the state of Israel in the scriptures. If I'm wrong, of course, whether you're in the chat or just let me know. But I don't believe there's a state of Israel in the scriptures. So the fact that they're claiming to be something that's not found in the scriptures speaks volumes to who they are.
Well, you kind of touched on something that's That's something to think about, when you think about a state, because, when you deal with a nation versus a state, because that's getting into the heritage, because a nation, right, according to
Right.
scripture, it's a group of people that share one language, right? One bloodline,
Hmm.
and of course, occupy the same territory. A state is the opposite. You can have multiple cultures, multiple
Yes.
people,
Yes.
within it. So that in itself makes it clear, even, if they're developing, saying that they're supposed to be a nation and they're occupying their so-called territories, then they cannot be classified. I mean, they will be classified as a nation. And I believe this is one of the things that stands out about what Harry Truman had done. He kind of, with his actions, it's almost like he kind of put some things in place to kind of have you still question who they are.
Right.
To not completely, so to speak, concede to their every demand. Any thoughts about that, guys?
And I don't know whether it was intentional by him or the Most High allowed him to say the quiet thing out loud. They did in their conquest to take over the world. They've been kicked out of so many other countries. They left a footprint. It was easy to see. So
Yeah, and you can actually see that turning, against them in this country. 'Cause,
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're going to keep trying to go to that anti-Semitic trope, pushing that, and in that Israel first doctrine, I think that's going to bite them.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe so too. And family, this is the quote from Harry Truman. He says, "Yet when they, the Jews, have power, physical, financial, or political, neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty." That will be considered anti-Semitic today.
Exactly.
And this is coming from his diary, right? And now they've made it hard to get to this, and for some of you guys that may not be familiar with my method of my presentations, my methodology, early on, I got frustrated because, especially with Hebrew sources, as far as the language, ancient Hebrew, a lot of the sources that was showing one thing shifted or got removed. So it's like, man, I made references to certain online resources only for it to disappear, not even in the way back. You know what I mean? So this here gives me the opportunity to like capture that source. So even if it disappeared, I have proof that this is a legitimate source at one time. And as you can see here, this is his own diary, and I have other clips. I even have myself certain special sources I access to that may I feel like that may change. I'll literally capture myself rather, not videotape. I'm going back in the day, right? I will actually capture myself, do a screen grab of me clicking on the link and going to the actual page, and I have that for this here. And so this is what he actually said. He said, "The Jews I find are very, very selfish. They care not about how many Estonians, Latvians, Finns, Poles, Yugoslavs, or Greeks get murdered or mistreated as displaced persons, as long as the Jews get special treatment. Yet when they have power, physical, financial, or political, neither Hitler nor Stalin has anything on them for cruelty or mistreatment to the mistreatment to the underdog. Put an underdog on top, and it makes no difference whether his name is Russian, Jewish, and he put some other names here. But that's pretty telling for him to say that. And this is 1947. This is from his diary entry, 1947, July 21st. And let me go back to that source, his letter here.
That's showing a pattern, Pastor Kelly.
Is that telling of what? You know?
That's showing a pattern.
So he said, go ahead, cuz. Go ahead, cuz. I don't want to cut you off.
But I was just going to land back on what you were saying. Like, that's showing the pattern, because even to this day, you know, the comment that you see in social media for those guys is DEI for the ish. DEI for the 1948ers, because, you know, when it comes to, you know, all the stuff that's happening over in the land, you know, when it comes to reporting the unalives, the number of unalives, of course, they are quick to talk about October the 7th, but then all the death and destruction that occurred after that, you know, they have no accountability for it. You know, no numbers that matter. So yeah, it's the same thing. That's a perfect reference that you pulled up.
And to your point, land backing on what you just said, and to answer that question, like, what made him get to that point? Because that entry inside his diary is almost a year, actually a little more than a year prior to this signature here. So something happened where, so he started, you know, what pressures, or seeing how they were moving, that something, you know, just wasn't right. You know what I mean? To where he got, you know, whatever convictions kicked in, that he couldn't just completely call them a new Jewish state. You know, and it's interesting. Like I said, when you see here, this is 6 p.m. Monday, July 21st, 1947, of this entry inside his diary. All right. So the African territory that the Jewish communities, these 1948ers, this is some of the areas that they targeted. The original country the Zionists targeted was, you know, to be a new Jewish state. We could go, Uganda was one of them. Uganda was one of the areas that they targeted. And you can see the history on, you know, study the history on Uganda, even how the president of Uganda was best friends at the time of Gaddafi, how he undermined Gaddafi. I mean, it was terrible when you really do the history, to study the history on that. But as you can see here, when Theodore Herzl began his quest to establish a homeland for the Jewish people, he sought out the support of the great powers to help achieve his goal. So this right here, there's so many red flags. If I know that I am from a certain area, why do I need to try to find other places to establish a home? You know, if I'm from, let's just say, New Jersey, and that is my native place and all my family is there, why do I need to try to find alternatives versus going back to where I'm from? You know what I mean? That in itself makes absolutely no sense. If they're saying that they're supposed to be the people of the book, Theodore Herzl began his quest to establish a homeland for the Jewish people. He sought out the support of the great powers to help achieve his goal. In 1903, Herzl turned to Great Britain and met with Joseph Chamberlain, the British colonial secretary, and other high-ranking officials who agreed in principle to Jewish settlements in East Africa. At the Sixth Zionist Congress at Basel on August 26, 1903, Herzl proposed the British Uganda program as a temporary refuge for Jews in Russia in immediate danger. By a vote of 295 to 178, it was decided to send an expedition, in other words, investigatory commission to examine the territories proposed. 3 days later, you know, I didn't put all of that in here, but then it goes on to tell us here, the point that I really want to get to is right here. where is it? It lists some of the other areas that they wanted to go to. Yeah, here it is. It says here, Uganda on the grounds of impracticability by the British, Zangwill turned his attention to settlement in Canada, Australia, but opposition from the local residents led him to abandon the scheme. Expeditions were sent to Mesopotamia, in other words, Iraq. You see here Libya, Angola. Look here, guys.
Wow.
A project that had some concrete success was the Galveston scheme, which contemplated the settlement of the Jews in the American Southwest, in particular in Texas.
That went over like.
Wow.
Any comments, guys?
For people who claiming the land and claiming their heritage to a land, they're all over the place.
Good point. And then I'm not sure if you have a map of Africa, because I know when you had the Uganda quote up, I was wondering, I was like, man, where's the Uganda? Because I'm not the best when it comes to knowing where these African countries are, aside from, the ones that I look at on a regular basis. But I had to look up Uganda because I was like, I thought it wasn't where I thought it was. So Uganda is, of course, it's below the Saharan desert, but it's right next to Kenya. It's like the middle to South Africa, right?
You want to share your screen, cuz? Are you good?
Yeah. Let me see if I can share screen.
That's funny. I did the exact same, and I looked up and said, "Yeah, it's on the west side." Then they went over that side. Then they went over here. Dang.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. I have it in the share, Pastor Kelly, if you want to put it up.
Okay.
But it's one of those things, family, where, all right, so hopefully you can see the screen, but yeah, this is Uganda right here. So if I zoom out, of course, that's Africa. So it's more south than Nigeria, more south than Sudan, more south than Ethiopia. And Ethiopia black. Come on now. And then it's like right next to Kenya. So they were thinking about contemplating putting these, pale-skinned Europeans right smack in the middle of Africa, in the blackest place on the planet. I guess you could say the same thing about South Africa, because that, there's a whole issue down there with apartheid and, people of a different persuasion taking over South Africa.
Yep.
But that's I'm surprised at that. I'm surprised they picked the darkest place on earth and contemplating sending Europeans there.
Yeah. Unbelievable, right? When you start, unpacking this history and seeing things for what it is, and look at what's to the left of it.
I was seeing it. Yeah, Congo.
Very strategic. Very strategic.
Yep.
And King Leopold already taken that area.
Oh yeah, man. They and what's unbelievable is that many countries, African nations, are still paying a slave tax to France. I think it's still like 16 or 17 African countries that are still doing that. So here's some of the strategies, right? China, they have a debt trap strategy to basically infiltrate the continent of Africa. This is one of the sources here. What is it? Y1 News or whatever, YO News or rather. But it says China's debt trap strategy. Look who it's targeting: Uganda. Uganda is set to lose its only international airport to Beijing. Uganda might soon join the list of countries victimized by China's famed debt trap technique. The country's only international airport, Entebbe, excuse me if I butcher his family, International Airport is under danger of being taken over by China. In 2015, China Export-Import Bank, Exim, gave Uganda $207 million at a 2% interest rate upon distribution. The loan, which was intended for the development of Entebbe Airport, included a 20-year payback schedule and a 7-year grace period. President Museveni, I'm not even going to butcher the name, dispatched a delegation to Beijing in hopes of renegotiating the harmful terms, the report said. The visit was fruitless because Chinese authorities refused to approve any changes to the deal initial parameters. On November 17, 2015, the Uganda government, represented at the time by the Finance Ministry and the Civil Aviation Authority, signed an agreement with the Export-Import Bank of China to borrow $207 million at 2% upon disbursement with a 20-year maturity period and a 7-year grace period. The agreement reached with the Chinese financiers effectively surrendered Uganda's most important airport to China, report said. Any comments, guys?
Shaking my head, brother.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out if that interest rate changed, because you know how they do, Pastor Kelly. They'll say, "Oh yeah, get this credit card for 0%," and it's 0% for only a certain period of time, and then the regular interest rate kicks in, and it's like that predatory lending, right, where it's 15, 18, that sort of thing. So I was trying to see if that interest rate of 2% changed. I'm not getting a confirmation, but yeah, that's a good way to for them to take over that resources. We were talking about resources earlier. That's one way for them to get it.
And see, the other part of this predator is, in family, just stating the facts. So some of my brothers and sisters that may be over in Africa, this is no disrespect to any of you guys, but many of the African nations, governments are so unstable to where these type of loans could fall through the cracks because many groups have their own agendas, and instead of doing what they should do with the money, they end up, using it for their own personal interests. And This is why you have not all countries, but you have many countries having these coups form, and then whatever one get into power, they take over the resources. And so they're not properly allocating the resources. They're not even paying back the monies in many cases, to where now this allow these different companies nations to come and swoop in, because they know that certain areas are unstable. And Uganda, unfortunately, especially since Gaddafi got murdered, got taken out, has been all over the place in many cases. Any comments, guys?
Our brother in Burkina Faso that he was organized his area and kicked France out, is trying to get other African leaders to join him, but unfortunately, some are in the pockets of some of these countries, like you said.
Yeah.
And these other countries are sending in, a destabilizing force. They'll say, because even over here in the States, you remember when I forgot the general's name, but it was some black general or
Idi Amin, not him, right?
No, but it's they tried to send him over to that area, talking about
I know what you're talking about.
Because they couldn't they wanted to have somebody that looked like the people that's there. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I know you refer to. I can't think of the general name, because they even was trying to put pressure on them to embrace homosexuality. Put laws in place. What's that general name?
Polluting the mind.
And that goes back to the first topic.
Yeah.
Infiltrate, pollute the culture.
And this has been a playbook from many nations when they targeting a particular area. Remember Nicaragua? That was big. You had the Brits having their team in there, United States, all of them having their teams in there, trying to put their puppet, into political office to basically have the power over that entire nation.
That's interesting too when you think about it. It's like they know that I believe that they know that they are the Israelites, like the people of the book, and it's almost like Superman. Knowing Superman, everybody knows that his weakness is kryptonite, right? So with the Israelites, it's like the worst kept secret. He's like, if you want to conquer the Israelites, get them to sin. Like you were talking about, that homosexuality and all this other debauchery. If you want to take them over, just send them a little sin. Get them to curse themselves. Then once those curses kick in, you just roll in and take over.
That is so good. That's good because you divide them from their strength.
Yeah. And see, it's not just China. Russia has some predatory loans, and this is what Russia did a few years back. Russia forgives African countries $20 billion debt. Now, Russia don't have money like that to play with, right? But there's an agenda behind this. There's something connected to this, right? Let me go into this article here. Russia forgives African countries $20 billion debt. Putin said this on Monday at the plenary session of the International Parliamentary Conference with the theme Russia, Africa in a multipolar world. Russia writes off over $20 billion debt to African states, he said. This is not the first time the Russian president is saying this. In October 2022, Putin, while speaking at a plenary session of the Russian African Economic Forum, said, "We provide trade preferences, cooperation within the framework of international structures. For example, through the World Food Program, International Civil Defense Organization, and World Health Organizations." Any thoughts, Kais? I have other articles, but I just didn't have it in this one right here with some of the questionable things that these different countries are doing.
And like you said, Pastor, this blueprint that they're running on Africa is the same blueprint they're running on us in this country.
Yeah.
For those in the chat don't know what this had to do with the price of tea in China, to say they run these same games on us.
Yeah. And to Benaya's point that he made earlier is what's the term that you used in your live earlier, Benaya? That they all are. You didn't say salivating. It was another term you used, as far as all of them trying to get their piece, so to speak. I can't remember the phrase that you used. What did you say? With the United States and all of them trying to now, they're now hovering over Nigeria because of the things that they're about to do.
Well,
anyway.
Yeah, they were like the oil wolves because once Nigeria, rung that bell that they were increasing their oil refinery capabilities, said, hey, we're going to be outputting, and they, so many barrels of oil, per day. Yeah, that was ringing the dinner bell. I don't know if that was smart.
Yeah, that's it. The dinner bell. That's what you said. He ringing the dinner bell.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a smart thing to do because, of course, you can imagine Donald Trump's eyes to narrow. It was like, oh, okay. You can,
and not just Donald Trump, but some of the other nations are now like, hey, now we got to see what we could do to put some plants inside the government to cause confusion there. That's kind of like the playbook with many other countries over in Africa is they know how many of the local government is. So they constantly trying to stir something up. That's why when you look at the government in Tanzania, is so unstable, even though they're, doing the research on it. There's some of the videos out there. And even that brother that you highlighted from Africa, because I peeped out his channel as well. He did a video on Kenya, and how Kenya has been coming over to Tanzania and doing things within, protesting and all that other stuff when you start dealing with the government, the voting and all that other stuff. So it's a lot of things that are going on over in the continent, not in all these all countries, but many of these countries. It's almost like they're on, I would say, I don't want to say on code, but it's like they all, are experiencing, many of them experiencing the same, similar problems at the same time. And that is now problems of division.
Yep.
Yep. And I would also, just to add to what you were saying, Pastor Kelly, that in addition to the governments, it's these companies as well, like the 1948ers companies. In particular, one of the ones I was looking at, earlier today and yesterday was BlackRock. So especially when you start talking about oil, infrastructure and these companies that are trying to have these major investments in Africa, predatory lending and stuff like that, you have to bring up BlackRock, and they're all over the place.
Yeah. You hit it on the nail, cuz you hit it right on the nail. And this is going to take us right into some of the things that you touched on. We already touched on this family before, so I'm not going to read all of this. But the question is this one of many battles for Africa? And here's one of the battles that I'm just going to highlight here. Nigeria background to nationalism. I'm not going to read all of this, family, but this is pretty much telling us how Africa or Nigeria got its name, right? And give us some information about that entire area. But look at what you pointed out today, Benaiah, tonight. And we touched on this as well, dealing with Nigeria. But it says here the coast protectorate in the territories in the basins of, and even though today, family, is pronounced Niger, but in the original pronunciation is Niger, right? So I'm trying to say it in a way, because I normally have my clip here, the Strong's Greek entry of this, but it is what it is. But it says in its affluence administered by the Royal Niger Company, other earlier names reflecting the caprice of the cartographer or traveler includes Sudan or Nigerita, right? So there's that name that you covered earlier today, Benaiah, Sudan. And as you pointed out, went from being one big landmass, one of the largest countries in Africa. And at one time, many people may not know this, but at one time, Africa was referred to as Sudan. So pretty much whatever was the dominant nation, that was the reference. How the entire continent of Africa was referenced. At one time, it was called Ethiopia. At one time, it was called Egypt. It went by many names, but Sudan was one of the names that it went by. Any comments? Anything you want to add to this, Benaiah?
Well, it may be controversial, but I know we have some folks that believe that the South Africa or some places of the like is where the territory of Israel is. And I was kind of thinking about this earlier too, because you know how the scripture talks about Ethiopia, just like you said, Ethiopia. But in the scriptures where it talks about Ethiopia, was Ethiopia, and not to put you on the spot, Pastor Kelly, but was Ethiopia and Israel the same thing in the scriptures?
No.
Exactly.
It was not the same thing. That's an easy one right there. Go ahead, because I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying then Israel can't be in Ethiopia if they're not the same thing, right? If the scriptures refer to Ethiopia as something separate, and then Africa is referred to as Ethiopia, then Israel can't be in that south part of Africa or whatever part, because that's called Ethiopia. Anyway, but
absolutely.
Common sense.
Exactly. And so what's interesting about this source here, Nigeria background and nationalism, is here where it says the first official recognition of the name Nigeria appeared in the debate in the House of Commons on the Royal Niger Company Bill in July 1899. Now, Benaiah, you did a lot of pulled a lot of sources, and you went in on the House of Commons. You want to just mention that to the people what the House of Commons is? And if
I'm trying to
there you
remember.
go. Because I know with the House of Commons, when you're dealing with with Europe, remember when they what's that one document that I made reference to as well?
Oh yes. The House of Commons. That was like the British Parliament.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the British Parliament, and that was where they had a document where they were trying to hold sessions on slavery. They were trying to figure out if slavery should be continued or canceled. So what they started doing was they started bringing in all these people that had firsthand knowledge of the slave trade. So they brought in ship captains, they brought in people that were caretakers that were over there in Africa that actually saw it with their eyes and experienced it. And they brought them in and they gave their testimonials about it. And that's where you heard things about, they kind of dispelled, some of these notions that, well, you heard things like, oh, well, Africans sold other Africans. They were selling themselves into the slave trade. Well, in the House of Commons, they had firsthand testimonials from people that were there that said, no, that's not what happened. It's like when the Europeans were there was no slave trade. Like nobody was selling nobody unless the Europeans showed up. And then the other thing that they said was the Europeans, when they showed up, they were the ones that were encouraging the kings, the African kings, to engage in slavery. Like they were giving them, all kinds of gifts and stuff like that, and motivations like, hey, why don't you go over there and get those people? And they were very specific as to what people they wanted targeted for slavery. So yeah, it's House of Commons stuff. That was a very interesting, important witness as to what really happened during the transatlantic slave trade, because it dispelled a lot of those myths about Africans selling Africans, selling their own people. That didn't happen. And then also about, because one of the things that people would say things like, well, if the Europeans weren't there, the transatlantic slave trade would still be going on today. It's like, no, the firsthand testimony was that when the Europeans stopped showing up, the slave trade stopped. So, sorry, Pascal.
And also to add to what you pointed out, when you're dealing with the House of Commons, if you remember, they had a so-called Jewish naturalization bill, right, that they were trying to put out there, trying to get approved. And in that bill, it was to have it so that way they would give citizenship to handpicked people from within our community, with the goal of, and the conditions is, let's just say if it was a man, then he had to marry a European woman. And if it was a woman, she had to marry a European man, with the goal of watering, hoping that that'll lighten up the complexion. And so that way they'll hold more and be more protecting of the British culture versus our own. And those were handpicked people that they were trying to push that agenda to. And it's the repeal of the Jews naturalization bill. It was in 1753, and page 106. I just found it here, but I'm not going to read all of that. But yeah, just a little bullet out of it though that was interesting. It says here, for them with subjects instead of slaves, a scheme was proposed for naturalizing all blackborns, and any of them without any condition whatsoever. I will say that our adopting such a scheme would be ridiculous because their progeny would always continue to be a distinct people. But if the conditions were added that no such blacks should be naturalized unless they declare themselves Christians, and that no such black man should be naturalized unless he married a white woman, nor any black woman unless she married a white man. Let me put this in here. I know I'm not reading it right. It's like almost like I know you guys like, okay, I might as well take a look at that, right? Let me copy that over real quick.
That actually goes along with the findings in the Spanish Inquisition. Because during the height of the Spanish Inquisition, the Israelites that decided to embrace Christianity turned against their brothers that were, trying to still, uphold the law, statutes, and commandments. And one of the things that these Christians did was that they gave a how can I put it, a decree to the king that they said, hey, you know what? We with you, king. We're not with, we're not with our old people. We're with you. And they stated that they would no longer, hang out with them, that they wouldn't fellowship with them. They wouldn't marry, like you're reading the stuff about being married. Like they said that we will not even marry with our brothers and sisters that are following these laws, statutes, and commandments. We will only do it with Christians. And I remember reading that, saying that, man, they are basically agreeing to whitewash their own lineage by doing that. So it's interesting you brought that up, Pascal.
They're agreeing with the council.
And so in this, as you pointed out, council, the crafty council, right? It says here, like, I shall suppose that for strengthening our sugar colonies, and who's over the sugar colonies? The 1948ers.
48ers.
And for peopling them with subjects instead of slaves, a scheme were proposed for naturalizing all the blacks born in any of them without any other condition whatsoever. I will say that our adopting such a scheme would be ridiculous because their progeny would always continue to be a distinct people. But if the conditions were added that no such blacks should be naturalized unless they declared themselves Christians, and that no such black man should be naturalized. Now, notice what the 1948ers, right? These are the same people. They're wanting to make sure that long as we promise that we won't embrace and hold on to our culture, that we'll embrace Christianity.
Yep.
And that no such black man should be naturalized unless he married a white woman, nor any black woman unless she married a white man. The ridicule of the scheme would be very much softened because their progeny would in time unite and coalesce with the rest of the people. It might a little alter the complexion of the people of these islands, but they would all become the same people and would look upon themselves in no other light than as subjects of Great Britain.
Wow.
Is that a crazy scheme or what?
Are you seeing the code? I feel like Neo in the Matrix. You see the code. They try everything they can to wipe away one of the signs of who we were.
And it was in the thing. I remember reading references where it was encouraged, like over in Britain or England, like this whole. There was this thing about white women being into black men. You know what I mean? Like that was a whole thing. Like you had these, pretty much rich Israel. It's kind of funny because it mirrors what happens today over here in the States. You had these rich black men over in Europe, because they leave in Spain and Portugal and they fleeing from over there, and they're taking their coins with them, and they show up in Britain because because it's like Israel will go anywhere where there wasn't persecution. So if there's persecution over in Spain and Portugal, and they looked over in Britain was doing their brethren okay, so they would move over there, and so they moved over there, and then they, like Pastor Kelly, like you said, they were pushing that, that thing, is like it was encouraged for the white women to partner with the black man, and just like today, if a black man got some riches, you see that partnership happen.
Yep.
So it's still, it's just funny, like it still happens today. But that was a thing back then, especially in Britain.
And family, those that are watching, I encourage you guys to read Nehemiah chapter 13, and you also will see this in Ezra. Ezra, dealing with Israel, the men mixing and meshing with foreign women, to where the children lost how to speak their native tongue. And that's Nehemiah chapter 13. And so you see, they know what they're doing. The whole goal, as you see here, they know we're the people of the book. But their way of trying to get us to denounce, in other words, embrace that shiny nickel, and they made our identity to look like a dirty dime and say, all right, I want that shiny nickel right there. And we see that happening right now. Look at what, as Benaiah pointed out, with the rich people from our community, looking in sports. Matter of fact, I was watching, was it a video? I can't remember who it was. A reporter was having a discussion about athletes, most of the athletes from our community, who they have on their arms now.
Yep.
So you see, this is part of the plan. And so let's fast forward here, family. But the point here with this article, you see that word Niger was not a negative word, because it's the name of a British company. All right. So they made it negative when it came to us.
I had it up there for you.
Oh, yeah. I see the audio there. Let me see here. Would it play? I got to add it to the stage. I may even download it. So that way I can, matter of fact, if you can email it to me, and that way I can download it, because that way I can play it.
I just got off the website. It's on this website.
Okay. I don't have my hard drive here with it on there, but
yes,
family,
it is strong.
Yeah. So who coined the name of this region? The person name is Flora Shaw. She coined the name of this entire region. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of it. I'll just show you the source. She is the one that named that entire region. All right. And this is coming from Journal of African History, Volume 1, 1960, number 1. All right. So this is the source, and you'll see the entry here, making it clear that she came up with the name. She is accredited with coming up with the name. As you see here, written by Miss Flora Shaw, who at the time did the colonies for the Times, just dealing with a publication of that time. But they're acknowledging that she came up with the name. As it says here, the name thus originated by Miss Flora Shaw did not receive official recognition until the territories of the Royal Niger Company were formally taken over by the imperial government on January 1st, 1900. All right. Let me continue on here. Let's fast forward. Let's see here. What other thing I want to cover? This is getting into the word Negro, right? As you see here, Negro, right? Because many of us may not understand that Negro in Niger is hand in hand. As you see this etymological dictionary, it says black-skinned person from Africa or of African descent, borrowed from Spanish or Portuguese Negro or Negro or Niger or Negro. Anyway, black Negro from the Latin, and it has it right here, the Latin. It's pronounced Niger. That's, Ethiopia, right? The name of, the king, so to speak. That's the title. This is a title. So you see the connection there. That's the point that I want to make. Century Dictionary, 1895, This is what this is the historical context of this here. Look at what it says, Niger, and look how they say it's pronounced, Niger, Nagar, Nagar, right? So it's making it clear it's not this Niger stuff that has been adopted, as I would say recent. But it says here a black man. You see, it's tying into the word negro, but it says nigger, or let me say Niger, is not as generally supposed a corruption of Negro, but is regularly developed from the earlier form of Niger. All right, so just giving you some information here, but look at what it says here. But its use is now confined to colloquial or illiterate speech, in which it generally conveys more or less of, I didn't put it all here. All right. It's them. They corrupted the word. Right.
Yep.
Right. And a key piece of prophecy, and I know Benaiah, you covered this as well, of how Israel would start taking on, the true people start taking on Israelites' names, basically taking our names back. One shall say, I am Yahweh's. Another shall call himself by the name of Jacob, Ya'aquab, and another shall subscribe with his hand unto Yahweh, and his surname himself, Kana, by the name of Yashara'al. And Benaiah, I know you covered a lot of this on dealing with Ola Uda Equiana. Did you want to share anything on that in connection with this?
Yeah, well, I was going to. I know when we were talking about the mixing of the races, I was actually going to bring up Ola Uda Equiano because he did cross over.
Yeah,
he did cross over with his marriage as well. But Ola Uda Equiano was, most people don't know is that, they'll tell you that that Ola Uda Equiano was his name, but one of the names that they won't tell you is that one of the names that they called him was Jacob. I mean, he literally had a name of Jacob. And then when you watched, oh man, what was that? The guy, Kunta Kinte. You watched Kunta Kinte. They were whipping him to try to get him to change his name. That was literally Ola Uda Equiano. He when he pulled up on the shores of the U.S. or of the Americas, his name was Jacob, and they whipped that out of him. Then they gave him, the American name.
Yeah, was it Gustavo?
Yeah, Gustavo something. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I'm brain dead too. So,
man.
But yeah, they whipped Jacob out of him and gave him Gustavo. Oh, Vashus? No, I gotta look it up.
So, family, it's like Benaiah pointed out as he pulled that up. That's what you saw in the Roots movie. That's not made up. That is real. That is real, and he bore witness of it inside his autobiography, stating how he was, he told them what his name, the name that he wanted to be called, which was Jacob, and they beat it out of him.
And if you guys remember when the Roots movie came out, there was an attack on the author about plagiarism. That started because after that, a lot of Afrocentricism arose in the country, and then they started attacking the author, so to try to hold it down because people started digging into more stuff.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna copy this map over.
Yeah, and it was Vasa. Gustavo Vasa was his American name. So yeah.
Because in one section he also made it clear, like, hey, call him Israel as well. If I remember correctly, inside his autobiography.
Yeah, well, he was talking about his people and his, what they've done, like all the practices that they had. It lined up with the scriptures, word for word.
Yeah,
he knew that they were the people of the book.
Yeah, and I know that you covered this on your live as well. Benaiah, and I'm gonna pull this over. I was copying these slides over so I can kind of update it. Let me copy it over right now. And if you want to touch on it a little bit, let me see here. Let me put it right here. And I'm going to take this one out because that slide doesn't have the input on it that I wanted. So let me back it up here. And I know you touched on it as well, Benaiah, this dealing with Sudan. As far as being referred to, the name being foreign Judah or distant Judah.
Yep. Because the older name for Sudan, when you look at the maps, on the old maps, they spelled it Soudan, and really that's really just two words put together, two Hebrew words put together. Soudan. I have to look up the ancient Hebrew words on it as well. But yeah, it's so is foreigner, and then Udan or Yuda, because sometimes they would swap that H sound out with the N on the end to make an on. But it's basically calling them Judah. So that whole track, which was when you look at the old maps, it shows Negro Land, and Negro Land had multiple names, just like what you were showing earlier, Pastor Kelly. Sometimes it's called Soudan, sometimes it's called Negro Land, sometimes it's called Lamb Land. And all three of those names are associated with Judah.
Yep.
And what's interesting, right, when you spoke on Sudan, and what I did a while back when I did this presentation showing in Sudan some of the names. And as you can see here, you have Rabbah, that is a Hebrew name. As you can see here, it says to cast together, increase, especially in the number. But then we also see Sadah, which is also a Hebrew letter, meaning to side off or side off figuratively. Then we see Adamua, which is Adamah. We also see Yaakov or Yakoba right here. Bambara, because I know you mentioned lamb. And what many people may not know, Bambara retained a lot of the ancient Hebrew. And this is the language, as far as the Asians' language stems from this. I have a document here. Let me see if I can pull it up here. You guys are making me work tonight. Any comments? Because I know you mentioned Lamb, Benaiah.
Yeah, well, it's called Lamb, and Bambara is the other name. Because Bambara was just to the north of the territory of Lamb. And Bambara in the old documents also was told to be a place of the Israelites, a dwelling of the Israelites. And in the same document, it's also shown that those are the people that were being taken and sold into the transatlantic slave trade. So when you hear about them going into the hinterland, which, inwards, away from the coast to go and get the people that they wanted to stick on board to the ships, it was the Bambara was one of those people.
Yeah. And see, I don't have my, I left my hard drive upstairs, but in my attic, and I could pull that source up, but I'm not. But Bambara also means Dabara. It's equivalent to Dabara, and Dabara means command. Right? That's the ancient pronunciation of. Many of you guys may say Dabar, but ancient Hebrew, if you want to go all the way to the true ancient Hebrew, every letter was pronounced with an ah, and they didn't drop the last ah. So that's why you see instead of Dabara, they're saying Bambara. As a matter of fact, I got a book right here. I'll just pull it up here.
And while Pastor doing that,
I've been meaning to do a video on it, but let me see here. Can you guys hear me?
I just want to mention.
Drop my earphones.
Can you hear me?
All right, I can hear you.
I just want to mention the chat, guys. Let's just stay on topic on what's going on because we need to keep everything in order.
This book right here, appreciate it, Berean Scholar. Let me share my screen. This book right here. I've been meaning to do a lesson on this. Got some great information about how even some of the words that you see in the 1948ers lexicon came
Is that one
from
upside?
this
Is it
people.
upside down, Pastor?
No, it's backwards.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Do I have it backwards? Hey, wait a minute. Let me look here. Yeah. Actually, yeah, I wasn't paying attention to it. Yeah. All right. So, uh, it reads from right to left. You see, Bam. I can't see it here. I'm trying to do it here, but Bambara. That's that big text right there. Bambara. Right. So it has some great information. I wasn't even paying attention. Thanks, Benaiah, for pointing that out. Blame Berean scholar.
Wow.
All right.
Written in the block letter Israeli, right?
Yeah, of course. You know, this Israeli wanted to make sure of that. You know what
So
I mean? But
he's
it's
using their source.
exactly. So let me see here. Let's get to another point here. This is dealing with the Berlin Conference family. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but dealing with King Leopold. But this is the key that I want to highlight. Belgium too arrogant to apologize for killing 15 million Congolese. To be sure, all European colonialists carried out unspeakable atrocities in Africa. The first and most benumbing was Belgian seizure of the DRC in 1885 by King Leopold II. All right, and it goes on to say, under whose rule 15 million Congolese were murdered. All right, and then and it just points out. It says here, yet till today, Germans show remorse. They paid reparations and teach their children that there is no excuse whatsoever for such atrocities. And it goes on to say the Belgians show no remorse, would not apologize, pay no reparations, and make excuses for the genocide. And why is that important, family? Well, let me show you something that their own sources, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, say about the Belgians, starting with the Belgian Jews. King Leopold III, who was the son of King Leopold II, Belgian monarch, today received a Jewish deputation consisting of the chief rabbi of Belgium. So they given total support to this guy, congratulated the king on his having ascended the throne of Belgium. The king thanked the delegation of the Jews of Belgium for their loyalty to him. Let me stretch this out. My apologies. Is this crazy or what? You know what I mean? You can't make this stuff up, man. They have things so upside down that everything is all about them. Any comments, guys?
And the atrocity that he did, he's still not on the list when people keep talking about the worst people in history.
15 million.
15 million.
I saw somebody in the chat echo that, because I saw that when you said 15 million, Pastor Kelly, I was like, 15 million?
Yeah.
And that's Israelites.
Yeah.
Yes.
Israelites.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they try to, when it comes to us, they always try to dumb down the numbers. Even with the Transatlantic World War, they'll try to say, oh, that number is about 10 to 20 million, when actually that number is 100 plus million, and they don't take into account many that died along the way. Just in the first leg alone, over 20 million died just to even make it to the slave ships.
And along with the 15 millions in the Congos, go south into the south where John Cicero, he had over 10 million people he slaughtered for those diamond mines.
I mean, the list goes on. Even the Arabic or sub-Saharan slave trade, 40 million at least. He's going to say something, Benaiah?
I was going to say we are truly a remnant. I mean,
Yes.
after millions and millions of our brothers were laid to rest, and we are the beneficiaries of those who made it. I mean, wow.
And you know, because the past couple of weeks I did a lesson on the tithe to really explain what the tithe is. And I know in this awakening, many would say that the tithe was just food and grain. It wasn't, family. When we really understand the tithe, the importance of the tithe, you'll understand what the remnant is, because the tithe is the remnant. You know, when you read Nehemiah, I believe it was chapter 10, it talks about how a tenth of every tribe, they cast lots for them to occupy Jerusalem. That's the remnant. The remnant of every tribe was taken to occupy Jerusalem. You know, and when we really understand that, the Hebrew word sha'ar means surviving portion. The remnant is the surviving portion. You know, and so you also see the northern kingdom there, because many would say, oh, the northern kingdom, they was totally you know, they got absorbed into the Assyrians. And that's not correct, because even in it's documented in Nehemiah that a remnant of the northern kingdom was in Jerusalem.
Yep.
I believe it's Nehemiah chapter 11 that points that out. So there was a remnant, there was a tithe, a tenth. You know, and this is very important with what I'm getting ready to cover here. Any comments, guys?
And you know, and that remnant was to be set apart for the Most High. And what the crafty council and the name stealers and everybody else is trying to do is spoil the remnant. I mean, the mixing of the races, like we just got through talking about, like Benaiah said, cutting us off by causing us to sin, cutting us off from our source. They're trying to spoil the remnant that the Most High set apart.
Mm. Wow. And like you said, and like even Benaiah, what he pointed out is just, man, we are truly the remnant.
Yes, amen.
You know, I mean, truly the remnant.
Amen.
Those numbers, and we're still here. That just tells you how resilient we are as a people. That you know, 100. I mean, when we put it all together, you're talking easily 130, 140 million people.
It's like blades of grass in the field, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
The first true genocide.
Yeah. And so this is an interesting prophecy here, and we can use this to kind of anchor everything. But Revelation chapter 9, verse 7 through 10. Did want to pull some scripture on you guys as far as this watching. And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. And they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth were as the teeth of lions. And they had breastplates, as it were breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was as the sound of chariots, of many many horses running to battle. Verse 10. And they had tails like unto scorpions, and there were stings in their tails, and their powers was to hurt men 5 months. And family, when you deal with end time prophecy enthusiasts, right? You know, and I was an end time prophecy geek. When I say I was a geek, I was a geek, right? So many in those spaces, you know, how we would basically interpret this prophecy here, we will point this to Desert Storm. You know, all the Apache helicopters, you know, how, you know, they look like locusts, just the amount of, helicopters that were sent in, Apache copters that was sent in, you know, for this war. So you are, you know, but that's still looking at things from a Eurocentric perspective. But we have to unlearn those things from, you know, and really understand our history, because Europeans have us interpreting prophecy through their history, but not starting with the impact of our history. So I'll just open it up to you guys, your thoughts on this passage here before we continue. All right. Berean Scholar, look like you about to say something.
I was just waiting to see what you give Benaiah for, but it goes along with what we just guys were saying that those pilots were the hurt man 5. I mean, they 150 million souls. It just grabs that. I'm sitting back in my chair when you said that 150 million, and we're still here.
Now look at this here. This is describing an invasion. And when you look here, it says the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses, prepared unto battle. And their heads were as it were crowns of gold. Now, think about slave ships when you look at it from an aerial view. Think of how they look. Even think of how it sounds when the wind hits their sails. Think about the cannons and the sounds that they make. And what really did it for me was right here. And they had hair as the hair of women. What was the hairstyles at that time? Looking in Parliament, the House of Commons, as Benaiah touched on earlier, they wear a wig. You got even African countries that mimic that and wear wigs in their judicial system for us to judge. But think about the people that invaded the territories, these areas. Any thoughts?
I just got to watch a documentary on some of our people in the motherland and their teeth, and how they have really good teeth because some of the stuff they do, the chewing stick and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And the next line about the teeth, like line, the people who was coming in had terrible teeth.
I'm trying not to laugh.
I mean, just think about it. I saw that, I was like, wow. I'm looking at that, Pastor, this is the first time I looked at this verse in this way, because when you mentioned about the hair, and I looked at that and said, that matches.
Yep, long hair. And then I was thinking about the breastplate of iron. That kind of takes me back to was it Daniel's prophecy with the statue? In the iron, it's like you see the iron associated with these people.
Yeah.
So it's
wow. And Benaiah, you probably remember when I caused the storm, just me saying that, hey, this is the transatlantic world war.
Yeah.
Because we all agree that the atrocity, for us to be the remnant, to survive all of that, the Great Tribulation is the transatlantic world war. But it's been dumbed down. We've allowed ourselves to be dumbed down, even though their own sources would tell us that this was a world war that occurred here. But because of how they define it, when I say they, our oppressors, they are allowed to tell our story and say, hey, it was a slave trade.
Right.
Now, what if we said that, hey, with the 1948ers, what if we said, hey, your Holocaust, was just a misunderstanding of just some bickering going on? You couldn't even finish the sentence. You know what I mean?
That's it.
They'd be ready to cancel you. But look at, as I think, Berean Scholar, you alluded to it, all of these different atrocities they're not spoken of, or they're watered down or minimized.
Not even mentioned.
Yep. Yep. And to your point, Pastor Kelly, it's like that's why I know when people I know we were talking about this. It's like that's why when people look at prophecy, they're looking for, you know, Jacob's trouble to, or they're looking for a time to come that's going to be worse than today, not knowing of what happened yesterday. I guess that kind of goes back to what some of the information that you're sharing. Like, man, if you hopped on like a time machine and went back to the time of slavery, and you saw a million people get laid down, you saw people's skin being taken off of them while they're alive, and then making shoes out of their hide. You saw that. You saw ears being cut off. You saw people being burned at the stakes. You saw people being eaten. I mean, family. It's like, because I know, like you said, Pastor, it's like we're on this side of the transatlantic slave trade, so we have no clue. I mean, all the little bits and pieces that we're picking up, we hear about babies getting fed to alligators. We can read about it, but we hadn't seen it. I mean, have you actually seen a live kicking, screaming child get, that whole gory scene, man. Yeah. I mean, it's that was a time of times, family. I mean, just be thankful. I say that, be thankful that we didn't go through that, but who knows what's right around the corner.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even down in Savannah, some of the dungeons, the underground tunnels. I remember there was a restaurant that they found the underground tunnel there. It was actually a dungeon, and they still had the shackles on the wall. Yah knows what happened to our people down there. The raping, the human sacrifices, the eating, all those different things. I mean, it's like a city under the city in Savannah, Georgia, that they did all kinds of satanic rituals to our people.
Tying a slave up to two horses going in opposite directions so that they could split them apart like meat. I mean,
I'm going to tell you something even worse, just as bad. All of it is bad. They would literally, for sport, take a barrel and put spikes, nails all around the barrel, and put one of our ancestors inside it and kick it down the hill. So by the time the slave is at the bottom of the hill, basically it's nothing but chopped meat. Cutting open the womb of a pregnant woman just to see how long the the child would stay alive.
Yeah.
Wow.
Placing bets on that.
And then on top of that, when we got over here, they after destroying and mutilating and raping our bodies from that time to now, they're still working on our mind, raping us mentally. That we came to the point that we're cutting each other down. We're fighting with each other. We don't see ourselves as who we are. We're not the set apart remnant that the Yah meant us to be, because they have twisted how we see ourselves in the names of the Abrahamic religions.
And family, just to bring home this point here, I talked about World War. This is what it says about defining this World War. Look at what it says. It says, a war engaged by all or most of the principal nations of the world, especially World War, either of two such wars of the first half of the 20th century. Now, they say that the key is a war engaged in by all or most of the principal nations, the primary nations of the world. This applies to us. All the principal nations came together and declared war. Leading the way was the Roman Catholic Church, along with the 1948ers, religion and Judaism. All of them, they led the way. The Abrahamic faith, they led the way. All principal nations And Benaiah, you mentioned the Asiento. Did you mention it today, or did you mention it on your live that you did?
Yeah. Well, I think I mentioned it during this live. But yeah, it's
Okay.
the Asiento. Yep.
And family, that's an agreement among them how they're going to what? Divide the spoils. Now, don't think that our many of these countries that was invaded just laid down and say, "Hey, come and take our people." They fought, but this is a whole different type of beast. Berean Scholar, I think you did you did research on this, and which I think with ChatGPT with AI, and you asked it a question of how many nuclear bombs
Yeah.
does an African nation own?
Who
You want to elaborate on that real quick?
it was a question because the narrative is that we're violent people here in the United States. That our culture is toxic and we're violent. And then you say, well, where did that violence come from? And you see how many of all the nations in the world, 190 sort of nation, Africa has 54 nations in it alone. Counting the nations in the Bahamas and everything, you got another 20 or so. So like 7 nations that are there. Of those nations, neither one of them have ever attacked another nation or enslaved or colonized another nation or own any nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. So who's the violent one? And the ones that they say have been violent are the ones that the other of those other nations is like, I think it was 5 of those nations, and we can name all 5 of them, who oppressed and colonized the other nations and gave them their tendencies.
And think about this, and Benet, you could jump in too. That tells us even our nature. We don't even think about creating weapons that can destroy our entire landscape. We have an appreciation for the things around us as a people collectively, not some. You always got the few bad apples, but overall, when you look at many of the cultures in Africa, the different tribes, they have an appreciation for the land. This is how you know when someone take on something that doesn't belong to them because they don't take care of it. They'll go down with the ship like the lady that King Solomon with the baby. The one lady was like, "Hey, you know what? Split it in half. I'm good." But the true mother was like, "You know what? No, before I let you do that, I'll just go ahead and just denounce my rights to the baby, so that way the baby could live." That's how you know these 1948ers. That's not they're not even close within the vicinity of this being their territory because they wouldn't be willing to tear it down. They have a mindset that if they can't have it, no one will.
Exactly.
Any comments, Benaiah?
Yeah, hit the nail right on the head, cuz.
Amen.
Yeah.
And that's not just the 1948ers. It's these colonizers. That's how they think. Let's put some detonators in place so that way, if they come and take back their own thing, at least we have some things in place that they can enjoy it. Wrapping this up here, let's prove, family, that this is a war. You guys know this source. I haven't dealt with it in a while because I've been in a different space with some of the things I've been teaching. But I said I'm going to start going back over some of these old sources, presentations to bring to the people. But Slavery in the Catholic Church, 1975, page 52 and 53. Papal grants to the kings of Portugal, giving authority to enslave Saracens and other non-Christians of West Africa, with whom Christendom is at war. You can't make it any plainer.
Declared war.
Say they are at war. In 1442, a Portuguese captain brought to the Gold Coast. So 1442, this is before the Reformation movement. So that means all these so-called Protestants and that the Calvinists, all those guys fall up under evangelicals. All of them was up under the Catholic Church.
Yep.
This is before again the Reformation movement, before the Protestant movement. It's before all of that. Because I think the Reformation movement kicked off like in the early 15th century. But this is before that, well before that. All right. But here's the kicker, family. These, it says a Portuguese captain brought to the Gold Coast some Moorish prisoners of war, exchanged them for 10 Negro slaves, and brought these back to Lisbon, a trading settlement established at Lagos by 1444. But here's the kicker. Let me get to a key point. It says here, there is no other explanation. A series of Baal, a series of Moloch, a series of the goat demon, a series of the papal bull, the series of papal documents which applied the well-known contemporary rules of war. It didn't say trade agreements. It didn't say the contemporary rules of trade and engaging each other in trade. It says the let me zoom in for you guys.
It was just immigration. It was immigration, right? Immigration. We immigrated over here.
That's the daughters of the Confederate, right? Pushing that foolishness, right? Was it the daughters of Confederates or the wives of Confederates or whatever you call it?
It's the daughters. It's the daughters of Confederacy.
I'm getting a little fancy tonight, family. Well, it didn't let me. It didn't save it. But anyway, but you see it right there. Contemporary rules of war to the situation in West Africa. Now, here's another key point here. Here's another key point. It says that our ancestors were not Saracens, right? Let me highlight it here. We're not Saracens. Guess it's not working here. I was trying to show off a little bit here. Not Saracens, and we're not Muslims. They were practicing Torah, family. And that's Benaiah's. Benaiah could go knee deep into that about the Spanish Inquisition. Yes. Any comments, Benaiah?
Head on the nail. It's because head on the nail, cuz.
All right, well, family, I know it's getting late, and I know Benaiah, you doing overtime here. You know what I mean?
Going.
He doing overtime. And you know what? Can I just bring up one wicked thing? I gotta just add something to here. I know I'm gonna make some of you guys mad. I just have to add one more wicked thing here, just to show how wicked these people are. In the words of Godfrey, wicked man. The keys of this blood, and this is a book that exposes the Roman Catholic Church. But look at here, the smoke of Satan. Right, this is dealing with the Pope and all that. Look at here, the smoke of Satan, which has entered the sanctuary, an oblique reference to an enthronement ceremony by Satanists in the Vatican. Besides the incident of satanic pedophilia. Now, pedophilia is satanic anyway, but they call it, they say satanic pedophilia. In other words, rites and practices were already documented among certain bishops and priests as widely dispersed in Turin, Italy, South Carolina, in the United States. The cultic act of satanic pedophilia are considered by professionals to be the culmination of the fallen angel's rites. These are the things that they were doing to our ancestors in some of these dungeons. What did they call it? What's the slave dungeon overseas? Was it
Talking about
Elmira?
Castle.
The castle.
Elmina Castle.
Elmina, yeah.
Amina.
Family, there's a dungeon below the place that they were having worship, where they were, when they had our ancestors stored like cattle, and they had a secret entrance. It wasn't really a secret, another access way to access it, and they would come down there and they would take women and men, because the one thing that gets brushed over is they were raping men as well. Many of those guys, those slave owners, were homosexuals.
What nation today is being called out for doing that?
Exactly. And just so happened, they murdered the prosecutor that was an Israeli that was prosecuting the soldiers.
Wow.
They just killed her. She was just murdered earlier this week.
Wow.
Man, that hole goes deep, right? That
Too
rabbit
deep.
hole. Family, they were doing that to our people. And I was watching and reading and studying these places. Man, it was ugly. And actually, we had a couple in our ministry share with me as well that when they went over there, they can see the scratch marks of our ancestors in the walls. Some of them losing their nails. And some of them are still embedded into the walls.
Imagine how hard you have to scratch to put marks in stone. Wow. And this came from one of the Abrahamic beliefs that did the mind job on us as a people, that we still trust their literature.
And they taught that it was okay. Why? Because we were not considered human. We were considered beasts in many of those circles that we were created on the fifth day.
But then again, I say we still trust their literature because the translations that we read in those, on our places of worship, we still trust their literature.
Yeah. Well, any final words, guys? I know we can go on and on with this, and we can pick up where we left off at. We could do this next week or something, because I know we just touched on it a little bit, and I just wanted to kind of pull this lesson out because, like I said, we all Benaiah did a great job with the Nigeria discussion earlier, and I know we talked about it as well on this channel, and it made me think about, it's like, man, the first thing came to mind was like, man, they doing a battle for Africa all over again. And it made me, pull out this lesson here. And as you can see, it lines up with what we see happening today. There's this never-ending battle for the resources of that continent. Any final comments, guys? I'll start with you, Berean Scholar, since you was getting ready to lean to the mic.
I'm just thinking, you brought out so much stuff on what these perpetrators, the Catholic Church, the Bull, and the 49ers, and like you said, Benaiah did a great job on how they are trying to do the same playbook again and again in Nigeria right now. That's why Trump doing what he's doing, and we need to be aware of how these mind games, they're still playing with us. I mean, these things are happening on a global sense, but also they're doing the same thing here at home.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one point that you made that's a great point is family. This is happening across the board. You
Yes.
know, this is not just with the Roman Catholic Church. This is happening in Judaism. It's in their Talmud that it's that a girl, you know, she's at the age of maturity is 3. You know,
Wow.
it's 3 inside the Talmud. You know, and they said if she's raped prior to that, her virginity will come back to her. In other words, she'll forget all of that. You know, and with a boy being raped, he says as if a person put a splinter in their eye.
Mhm.
So it's in the Roman Catholic Church, it's in Christianity, it's in Catholicism, and all of that. It's in Judaism, and it's in Islam.
Yeah.
Muhammad, he married a 9-year-old girl. You know, so it's there. Anyway, sorry about that.
No,
But
that's
now you
good.
sound like you're ready to go geek mode.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, man, that the seed of the serpent is real, man. Because a lot of all these atrocities that we're listening to, all these wicked deeds that we're listening to, and we just kind of just shaking our head. I'm looking at the at the chat. People are like, wow, really? I mean, they're just taken aback, just like we are. And it's like, I don't know about you all, but I know sometimes when I used to read some of the stuff, I would be like, man, it's like, man, these people are wicked. Like, who would sit around and just think about, well, you know what, I'm gonna take your skin off. Like, who does that?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Who does that? Like, who does we're gonna hook them up to horses and split them apart? Who does that, family? I mean, you got to be some sort of special evil to be thinking about that sort of stuff. And I mean, the scriptures do talk about, we were given to our enemies. We're in the land of our enemies, so that makes sense that like they would hate us. But that much, I don't know. That's the thing that gets me past Kelly and Brother Berea. And I'm just looking at this, just shaking my head, like, man, these people are evil and wicked, and they have to be like the seed of Hasatan, because to me, like, normal people don't think that way.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just me.
Yeah. Well, definitely they're not normal. You know what I mean? Wow.
Right.
Wow. Well, guys, we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up. I still got a little more things I gotta do before I take it down. Gotta get all my bags packed and everything, and family going away tomorrow. So so got some things to do tomorrow. So I'm like, gotta get up early in the morning and get my stuff together. But really appreciate the conversation and educating the people. Really appreciate it. And we're just going to go ahead and close it out. And Benaiah, you gave your final words. I know we'll do it again. Berean Scholar, starting with you. Any final words that you want to give to the people again?
I'm just glad that both of you took the time to show this to our people, because Israel, we need to be aware. We need to be awake. We need to be in line with the enemies coming against us, because it does us no good to not to know what the enemy's doing. And yes, Yah is going to take care of us. Yah is going to provide, but we have to be aware.
Amen.
Yeah, but
you got to helm, Benaiah.
No, I was going to echo the sentiments of Berean Scholar, and also just to say, thank you for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure to come on with the, with Mishpachah and with family, and just revisit this history. I'm an advocate of history and kind of making sure that we restore the history to our family and friends, because if you don't know it, then you're going to be vulnerable to repeating the same mistakes that our forefathers did. So thanks for bringing this out, Pastor Kelly.
Absolutely, and appreciate you guys. And like I said, Benaiah, you did a great job with the
yes
the lesson earlier today. And Berean Scholar, keep doing your thing with the interviews and all. You know, getting some momentum with that. And family, if you guys not familiar with Berean Scholar's channel, Berean, did you want to just mention that real quick? Your channel and your series.
Oh, you talk about the Great Awakening. The Great Awakening. I got an opportunity to be in contact with some of the family of Israel abroad, and some people coming on and sharing their life story, the journey of how they came into this awakening. And you know, and it's funny that YouTube guys are on this because in several of my stories, people say, "Well, I didn't know what was going on. I was sitting in church and seeking for more, and I was on the internet, and I heard this guy, We Woke Now. I heard this guy up in Israel, and I saw something that woke me up, and you know, so people are looking for answers, and so if you will, you know, go to the channel and look at some of these testimonies and join in. If you want to share something, just contact me.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
I'll drop the link right here.
All right, appreciate it. Benaiah, your book, and as you wrap up, anything you want to share about your book?
Yeah, well, if you're interested, Black History Case Files available in most of the those outlets where you can order it online. You know, Barnes and Noble, Amazon, and stuff like that. And so a lot of the history that we talked about the Asientos and you know, how, like Pastor Kelly said, that World War, you know, got some of that in there as well. So yeah, if you want some clarity on that, you know, feel free to get the book Black History Case Files. It's out on Amazon. Yeah, thanks for that, Pascal.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, with that being said, family, in the words of Yahweh, the words that he gave to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, as Israel was, you know, they were at a dead end, and the Egyptians were, you know, approaching, said, "Fear ye not, stand still, see the salvation of Yahweh." These Egyptians that you see here today, they will not have power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for you, but here's the kicker, family. We have to hold our peace. Can't go back, can't stay here. Keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11, verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14, verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According